Hey, what's up? It's me, Mr. Airon the History Buff channel here. Welcome back to another video. So in today's video, I'm gonna be covering over in today's about the pirates and the Golden Age of Piracy here. So in today's video, we're gonna be covering over like one of the history's like greatest, like basically most fearsome and like basically pirates that are rated across the Caribbean and the and North America and the and pretty much circumnavigate around Africa and probably others like across through the Indian Ocean. So if you guys want it, so we're gonna be covering over like how they acted on trades of piracy and the and if they go look acts on trade and circumnavigating the world and did they fought against other European rivalries. So yeah, but before we get into this video yet, if you guys haven't yet, please be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel if you're new. Don't forget to comment and turn on the bell notifications. That way you get notified by every video that I'll be posting in the channel. And yeah, so let's get right to it. Alright, so I know what you guys may be thinking. So before we get into this video, I'm kind of curious to ask a question that I want to get to basically ask you guys is like, what are the things do you guys think about when you're pirates? Because let's be honest with you guys, every time I talk about basically about pirates, literally, some of you guys keep thinking about basically, like just animated or like basically fictional pirates that are from like both movies and video games here. But I wanted to also let you guys kind of get an idea that it basically also played a role in basically in the American colonies and around the Caribbean and around in Africa and the Indian Ocean too here. So there are real pirates, or you might guys might think about like the series of the like in the Pirates of the Caribbean series, or Treasure Island, or One Piece, or Peter Pan, or I don't know, Scooby Doo, or Kermit, I guess here. These are kind of the movies you guys might be thinking about here, but today in this video, I want to be covering over one of the most historical, like, pirates and, like, the real pirates of the Caribbean and, like, their act and role in trade and piracy here. And there's also another facts that are a comparison then to, like, from movies and video games to what has happened in history. Like to say that there's no such thing as like no historical record evidence of like pirates like pushing people at the walk, forcing them to walk the plank here because pirates would simply not do that because they wanted to like basically add more members in their crew, and I think the also other thing is like basically treasure hunting is also basically fictional here because of like there's some like legends or tales here that I thought that was from the treasure like that, and which is like back from William Kidd, who was executed back in 1701, where he said he would then like basically hunt treasure down into like basically in Gardens Island in New York, but at this day nobody knows it for sure. So treasure hunting is basically fictional here, and it's kind of also specifically rare for also to be a rare like big like huge battleships like something like few of the men that I'll be also getting to like Bartholomew Roberts here, who also raided through a bunch of like the pirates and Caribbean ships, like basically sailing trading from Africa to the American to like went to raids in Brazil and also to the to the round through the Caribbean, to where he raids basically loot a lot of treasures and stole a couple also like from Spanish ships here, and where he named one of the ships the Royal Fortune, and yeah, so anyway, but I'll get to these pirates later on. So yeah, let's still begin here. All right, so the first things off, let's begin off with the English, like Francis Drake here, who is born from 1540 to all the way to when he died in January 28th of 1596. If you guys don't know who he is, Sir Francis Drake is like one of the most famous for being an English admiral, explorer, and a privateer who became the first Englishman to circumnavigate the globe from 1577 to 1580 here. So he basically like circumnavigated around like all around the like throughout the Americas here, and like basically he also basically when he did like there was like a cloudy forest here and some prior to raids from like other European ships, but then like he was then later got through ports and settlements throughout South America, but then he also later established also a settlement when they also reached into to California, and like basically, like when they also raided through Mexico City before that, and then after all of those things, he went and then back went into Asia here, and where he circumnavigated, raided, and plundered, and also traded throughout the Caribbean, and like through like some sort of spices, silk, and trade, until then like where he then had to circumnavigate all around here until he had to go back to England, and like leading during the raids against the Spanish ships and settlements, playing a key role into the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588, and serving as a naval officer and a mayor of Plymouth. He was a hero of the English, known for challenging Spain's dominance, while Spanish viewed him as a dangerous pirate. And yeah, so like because he served under this of a privateer and like basically a naval officer, that he served all of this basically from the queen at the time, known as like Elizabeth the First. Yeah, so. Yeah, let's go to the next one. All right, so now the next pirate I want to talk about is an Irish pirate named female pirate named Grace O'Malley, who's from 1530 to 1603. Where Grace O'Malley was a 16th century Irish craftsman and a pirate queen from the west coast of Ireland, known for leading her ships in trade and piracy while fiercely resisting English rule. In 1577, Grace O'Malley was at war with the pirates from North Africa, right? So like he was basically for most specifically the Algerian pirates in the Atlantic Ocean, and like basically where she came, thus resulted in her in triumph here and raided to all the pirates. But then like by that time here in 1593, she met up with the England's queen, known as Elizabeth I, to talk through the negotiated settlement regarding her territory and release one of her family heirs, like her brother, who had been captured with her and the brother. Because before that kind of thing here, because like during like Grace O'Malley, because England was basically raiding through, like basically invading all of much of from Ireland here, establishing like the Scottish and later the English and all sort of plantations here to increase the plantations and like to increase their profits here, and so Grace O'Malley had like in which the negotiations and peacemen had been basically dealt here, and which then like Grace O'Malley continued as like her service as like basically a pirate here until she then retired. Until she later, both Grace O'Malley and Queen Elizabeth the First both died in the same year of 1603, and she was a symbol of the Irish resistance and a powerful historical figure. Remember her strength and defiance. All right. So now let's get to the pirate. So his name is John or Jack Ward from 1553 to 1622. So if you guys don't know who he is, Jack Ward was a 17th century English pirate who became an Ottoman corsair operating in Tunis. He is known for being an inspiration of the character from Jack Sparrow in the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, partly because of his nickname Birdie or Sparrow. He is also a successful corsair. He is known for his naval expertise and a flamboyant and style for significantly training for the Barbary pirates in gunnery and seamanship. So basically, what John Ward, like after he was born in 1553, he was basically in England, where he then he eventually then became a pirate because many years to then, and like basically he then raided also basically pirate, where he went to raided to like the to the North Africa here, and like basically when he also arrived in Algiers, where he then where it was basically like a pirates where they drink and they see alcohol and such, and he also gave himself also like a marked tattoo, which basically many people then call by his nickname Jack Sparrow here, which is later also that's where he gave up this nickname here from. and like basically also that when he also led up with his three ships and like his men to basically raid up against like the Venetians and to near the coast of Cyprus again, and also with the English back in 1577, in which then like it turned out to result in a failure until but then John Ward was able to escape, and then he reached into Tunis or into Algiers, and like basically he then converted into the religion of Islam, in which then like many of people back in England heard about that news, and basically they were mad and frustrated, and then they played even plays to mock John Ward, that the being of a pirate that he converted also into Islam, and he remained in Algiers then here with his resulting with he remained into Algiers until his death in 1622 here. All right, and then we have Francois Olonias. Correct me if I'm pronouncing. Sorry if I'm pronouncing this very wrong. From 1630 to 1669, a year ago or two here in his political career, the Olonias was he was shipwrecked into the near of the Champique in Mexico. A party of the Spanish soldiers attacked the Olonias and his crew, killing almost the entire party. Aloniaso survived by covering himself in the blood and others hiding in amongst the dead. He was also known for basically for sailing to Tortuga and with Tortuga, and he and his crew of 440 pirates and sacked Maracaibo, and what is now modern-day Venezuela, joining the forces of the fellow buccaneer Michel Le Basquiat en route to the Onios across the pass with the Spanish treasure ship which he captured, and among the cargo of the cocoa beans and gemstones and more than 260,000 Spanish dollars here. So he continued his pirating career here until he died in 1669, and it's unknown, like basically of the case of death, because we don't know exactly the evidence of how this pirate had actually how he passed away. So yeah, let's go to the next pirate. Okay, so we have the pirate Henry Morgan here from 1635 to August 25th of 1688, where Henry Morgan is one of the most famous for being a Welsh buccaneer who led during the raids against the Spanish colonies in the Caribbean in the late 17th century. His most notable being the 1671 sack of Panama City. He was a prominent privateer for the English crown, a role which he had mazed for great wealth and led to some of the largest fleets into the throughout the Caribbean. His three most famous exploits were the 1668 sack of Portobello, and the 1669 raid on Maracaibo, and the 1671 attack on Panama City. The attack on Panama City was a massive undertaking that involved a fleet of 36 ships and over 1,800 men, and ultimately dealt with a significant blow to Spanish power into the region here, where he raids and plundered also a couple of the islands, and then throughout the plundered and traded through like basically throughout the American colonial ships here, and raided an island, and where he plundered just like piracy and like trade and commerce, and basically until he was then captured and then later killed in 1688 here. Okay, so now we have Thomas Tew, who is from March 1649 to September the 7th of 1695. Thomas Tew was a 17th century pirate, often called the Rhode Island Pirate, known for pioneering the Pirate route into the Indian Ocean, and for his part of the attack on the Mughal fleet. He was a privateer who later turned to piracy, amassing a large fortune before being killed in battle in the Arabian Sea in 1695. His name would have legend endured, and even leading to a brand of rum named after him. Okay, now here we are. We to the end to talk about the infamous, famous pirate Blackbeard. So Edward Teach, aka Blackbeard, from 1680 to November 22nd of 1780. So, but basically, guys, Blackbeard was born in 1680 in Bristol, England. Here, who he would later become like one of the most notorious English and famous pirates in the Golden Age of Piracy from 1650 to 1730, who operated into the West Indies and to the eastern coast of North America in the early 18th century. And like basically which basically means he has like basically his they commanded now his own ships, and he has also crew members such as later Steve Bonnet, who basically set sails with Blackbeard. And like basically he was known for like basically his raids, such as the raid in French Bordeaux de Guadeloupe in like 1717, where he plundered and invaded ships. And he also made known for his constant raids, also throughout English and French ships throughout like the Caribbean, and also for most specifically his famous like raid and trade through South Carolina in 1718, in which he was for, and with that he was for commanding a ship called Queen Anne's Revenge. He was a fearsome reputation for the control of piracy. Blackbeard and his crew torched and burned down the city of Guadeloupe and raided through several French slave ships, including the slave ship called the La Concorde, and the newly acquired of the Queen Anne's Revenge, and the Spear of Terror throughout the Gulf of Mexico and to the Caribbean. Although Blackbeard's piracy and like being a pirate didn't last long, though, as he was then trapped and captured and like surrounded by the English, until he was then captured by a British naval officer named Maynard, and he basically there was a whole bad naval ship battle between the English and the pirates, until Blackbeard was then basically killed by Maynard and basically gets shot, and then gets beheaded here, and in November 22nd of 1718. All right, now we have the next pirate, John Go, from 1698 to June 11th of 1725. What do you know? What he's known for is Scottish. He was a Scottish pirate active in the early 18th century. For his infamous for a shot and a violent career, included mutiny and murder and raiding of the ships off the Iberian Peninsula before being captured and hanged in London in 1725, and where he is also for the name of a 19th century Scottish musician, composer, and music publisher, and a contemporary Canadian sky instructor, climber, and the mountain guide, and so significant that John Go depends on context. Go rose to notoriety after a 1724 mutiny against the captain of the merchant vessel, the Caroline, during which he had the crew murdered the captain and other officers. His attempt to lay low in his hometown of Stormness failed, leading to his capture after a failed raid on the local mansion. He was hanged in London in June 11th of 1725. Okay, now we get to another famous pirate, William Kidd, from 1645 to May 10th, 1701. By the 1689, he had become a member of the French and English pirate crew and sailing into the Caribbean under the Captain Jean Fontaine. Captain William had set sail in 1696 from England on the ship called the Adventure Galley, and he sailed around to the continent of Africa between the coast of Madagascar and present-day Mozambique, and because Captain Kidd thought he was able to capture the Red Sea pirates, but one of the crew members had grew discontent, and then later one of them launched a mutiny, but Kidd then like killed one of the crew members, and like basically he was by then he was then William Kidd has then felt troubling and felt a lot of guilt here. But then they were able to continue their journey into the Indian Ocean, where then William Kidd had then attacked a French ship called the Guetiat Merchant, and because of his crew mutations, he needed to seize the valuable prize to appease them and his wealthy backers in England. The ship was that flying into the French colors, making it a legal target under the terms forms of privateering commission to hunt pirates and enemy French ships. However, Kidd's subsequent actions, like keeping the treasure and his crew discontent, ultimately led him being branded a pirate. He wants to go back to Boston, in which he did in 1700, to claim his innocence, and but he was then caught and then pulled on trial. But then, like before his execution, he said that he was gonna later also like where his men had also plundered where he had founded his own treasure here, and like basically put it into Gardner Islands in New York here. But to this day, like where he buried his own treasure here. But this to this day, people were still finding it, but they don't know exactly where it was. Way before then, he was being executed by being hanged in 1701. Alright, now we get to the next pirate, Henry Jennings, from March 1681 to 1745. So, you guys don't know so Henry Jennings is known for being an 18th century privateer who became a prominent pirate and the leader of the Republic of the Pirates in Nassau in Bahamas. He was famous for his raid on the Spanish 1715 treasure fleet, salvage camp, and for later accepting a royal pardon to become a pirate hunter. Henry Jennings was an English privateer and a turned pirate. Jennings' first recorded act of the piracy took place in the early 1716 when the three vessels and to like 150 to 300 men, Jennings' fleet had ambushed the Spanish salvage camp from during the 1715 treasure fleet until he continued his like basically his privateering and like being a role in the pirate into the raids throughout also through the Caribbean here and to alongside with other pirates like later Blackbeard and Henry Henry Morgan here until his death around in 1745. All right, and now we have Samuel Bellamy. So from February 23rd of 1689 to April 26th of 1717. So Samuel Black Sam Bellamy was a famous pirate known for the Robin Hood of the sea for his democratic approach to piracy, treating his crew fairly and dividing a loot equally. His short but successful career in the early 1700s saw him capture over 53 ships, including the slave ship called the Wide, with its immense treasure. His piracy career ended abruptly in a shipwreck off of Cape Cod in 1717, which also led to his death here. Alright, and then we have Edward England from 1685 to 1721. So Edward England was an Irish pirate who operated into the Caribbean, the Eastern Atlantic, and to the Indian Ocean between 1717 and 1720 during the Golden Age of Piracy, and which Captain England's successful but brief pirate career came to an end when he was marooned by his crew on the island of the Mauritius in 1720 until he was then killed later on in the following year of 1721. Alright, now we have one of the most brutal pirates known as George Lowther. We don't know exactly when he was exactly born yet, but George Lowther was an English pirate who, although he was known for his life, reportedly active also in the Caribbean and Atlantic during the early 18th century. He was known for his association with Edward Lowe here, and like basically that they were both brutal pirates, and a scan of a 1936 Jolly Roger cops of the pirate card of a pirate George Lowther. Basically why they are known to be known as like basically very brutal pirates is that basically when they kidnap and capture one of their victims, they would then often cut off the victim's ears or their mouths here and basically use them as basically brutal to even use them as basically to eat them off here, but which is actually kind of a brutal evidence that these pirates why they're known as to be brutal pirates. And then we have another brutal pirate that I mentioned, Edward Ned Lowe, from 1690 to 1724. Edward Lowe was one of the most brutal men to command a pirate ship. During the 1720s, he plundered ships on both sides of the Atlantic and became notorious for his savage cruelty. He took a sadistic pleasure in cutting off the noses, right, and ears and lips and his victims that I mentioned about before. And then we have Steve Bonnet, who you guys don't know who he is. He was a pirate member that I mentioned when he also set sail with Blackbeard, who lived from 1688 to December 10th of 1718, where Steve Bonnet was known as the gentleman pirate for abandoning his wife and kids and his own plantation from Barbados, and he had a crew and a ship, and he then later became a pirate, in a decision that puzzled his contemporaries and remains a subject of historical debate here. But Steve Bodden then eventually did actually had set sail and did join his piracy and career with Blackbeard here, and like basically, but like when the English ships had then raided through and was a battle against Blackbeard's crew and the British, John Maynard, and when he killed Blackbeard, Steve Bonnet was then also killed by later also by the Englishmen also too in December 10th of 1718. All right, now we have Charles Vane. So from 1680 to March 29th of 1721. So Vane spent most of his career operating into the Caribbean, based in Nassau, the capital of the Republic of the Pirates in the Bahamas. Back when it was like established, I think in 1715 officially, when he raided through the ships in this region frequently. His activities extended to the Bahamas up to the Atlantic coast. With his further east of the northern points, including the raids of the near Long Island to visit in North Carolina's Oriocoke Island, which meet the other pirates like Blackbeard. He also raided through ships with it is now Charleston, also in South Carolina, and like basically also. And yeah, so in the previously piracy and ships here, and many other European and Spanish ships here, and like the Orioc Island was basically, if you guys don't know what the Orioc Island is, it was basically kind of founded back by the English, and like basically where like the Europeans back in the 1650s here, where they basically founded the place and like charcoal road and made the new lands here until they established like trade and commerce. So that was also part of back into New York, back into the founded relative colonies and into the American colonies. I meant here. All right. So now we have Benjamin Hornigold here from 1680 to 1719. Born in England back in the late 17th century, Hornigold began his pirate career in 1713, attacking merchant ships in the Bahamas. He helped establish the Republic of the Pirates and Nassau in 1715, but by 1717 he was the captain of one of the most heavily armed ships in the region. Called for the Ranger, Benjamin Hornigold died in a hurricane in late 1719 when his ship was wrecked by an uncharted reef between the Bahamas and Mexico. And so basically Benjamin Hornigold was basically known for basically Pirate of the Heights, but also basically he established also like the pirate utopia in what is now Jamaica here, and like basically where the pirates had wasted and drank and like basically had a party and really great gambles and raids, and they talk about discussions about raiding against European ships or into through lands and piracy here. And basically Benjamin Honegold was basically also known for basically raiding constantly also many English ships here, and raided through the where he was then like raided after this was like after when he raided through the Bahamas and take over the Republic of the Pirates also from the English here, and like him and then later Hornigold and also Blackbeard, and I think were his men on Charles Vane also raided through Tortuga, and like basically the pirates had also like raided through the Tortuga Island in back in 1675 here, and and then like basically also raided through coastal like into others such as also in Mexico and to parts of throughout the Caribbean. All right, now we have to run to the female pirates known as Anne Bonny from March 8th of 1697 and disappearance after November 28th of 1720. So Anne Bonny was known for being a fierce and infamous female pirate during which the Golden Age of Piracy, who operated also in the Caribbean in the early 18th century, who had been sailed with both Jack Rackham and Mary Read, were both captured. But then eventually they both did set sail together here into the operating and then later raiding through English ships who were also around the Caribbean here until when he left off into later in the coast of like into Jamaica and Haiti and but then who was then later again captured by the English here and then they were then put on trial and but Jack Rackham and then but then later Jack Rackham was also taken and he was later dead and then later also with Mary Read. But before they were executed, Mary Read and Anne Bonny, who had been they later came to the court to the English court to the American colony, where they basically said that they were both pregnant and they later then set to the in jail here until Mary Read was then both where they were also where he'd also died due to I think also to tuberculosis and where whilst Anne Bonny is still lit who had claimed to be pregnant and who escaped his execution. Bonny's final fate was unknown. Some accounts suggesting that her father interviewed to secure her release back to the Charleston, and while others suggested she was eventually hanged here. But to this day we don't know exactly what happened, we don't know exactly what caused her death, or basically because she escaped or somehow. So we don't find any evidence of it. All right, and then we have Mary Read that I mentioned before, who is under the notorious pirate who did serve under the command of Jack Rackham and Anne Bonny. However, much of Mary Read's background is unknown, but Mary Read then later died in prison in April 28th of 1721, that I mentioned. All right, and then we have Jack Rackham. From December 26th of 1682 to November 18th of 1720, where he's known for basically a flamboyant style, which he earned him his nickname for his perseverance and for cotton clothing and for having the two most famous female pirates, that being Anne Bonny and Mary Read, for his crew. Rackham's career was short but notable, and where they basically also operated in the Caribbean that I mentioned, and he was captured and then later hanged in Jamaica in 1720. That took place where both also Mary Read had also passed away, and where Anne Bonny was imprisoned, but then she later escaped. All right, so then we have another English pirate known as Henry Avery from August 23rd to 1659 to until to this day we don't know exactly know where he is, so or where his death or anything like that, but Captain Henry Avery was an English pirate, infamous for being one of the very few major pirate captains to escape in his loot without being arrested or killed in battle. For being the perpetrator for what he has been called the most profitable act of piracy in history, in 1695 to 1696, he had launched a mutiny and then later became a pirate, and they cut off access for trade for the British East India Company to trade, who had by that time had been Mughal trading with silk, ivory coast, and tea, and silk spices and commerce, and with the British East India Company. But the British had meant to capture Henry Avery, but unfortunately Henry Avery was then later lost into history. So therefore, the British were never able to capture him, because before all this, Henry Avery was also known for basically for raiding also several Mughal ships throughout the Indian Ocean too. All right, then we go to the other famous pirate, Bartholomew Roberts here. From May 17th to 1682 to February 10th of 1722, Bartholomew Roberts was known as the Black Bart here, who was famous for being a most successful pirate of the Golden Age of Piracy, capturing over 400 vessels in just 3 years. He was also known for his flashy attire, for his unique and provocative Jolly Roger flags, and for drafting a pirate code, which of conduct with his crew. If you guys don't know what the pirate code is, which is basically kind of like for pirates to either declare war or to act on trade and commerce, or to sell and get money here, or basically raid other European and ships, or take commerce and to steal all the cargo here. And this pirate code is only applied to pirates only here, and in order for yourself to become a pirate. And so So his ruthless and daring approach to piracy earned him the fearsome reputation, and his death in battle with the British in the Royal Navy, where he was then later shot in the neck back in 1722, marked the end of the era, which is the Golden Age of Piracy, which another thing to note about Bartholomew Roberts was that he was basically operating throughout like the through the Atlantic Ocean here, and re-raided through basically who was in there then later under the command here, where he basically then like into the Atlantic Ocean and basically raided with many English ships, and then he later also into he went also to Guinea and like basically went is into part of West Africa to sell and trade, and also called silk, wine, and glass, and then later sometimes also later also enslave people, and like later then raided also through Atlantic Ocean, raided throughout also into the to the Caribbean here until then. He was also basically Bartholomew Roberts was then also later also for a fit by which then like he was also later known for basically raided through also into Brazil here, where he captured many of like British plundered and sacked many of the ports and settlements throughout in the Portuguese colony of Brazil, and then later also captured many ships, and where he find treasure and loot, and that basically he then got to the ship's nickname the Royal Fortune, and that's where the main ship that he was in operating in before his raids in the Caribbean, and then like where he basically looted and trades into I think many of the English ships, and then later into the coast of Africa. He was then later caught by the British here, and he tried to escape. Then he was later shot in the neck and killed in 1722. And then and now let's go to the question to you guys of what exactly was the Golden Age of Piracy. So the piracy in the Caribbean peaked the Golden Age of Piracy was flourishing of strategic bases, lucrative trade routes, and supply of privateers turned pirates out and turned pirates after wars ended. It declined. The European powers like Britain cracked down the systematically hunting pirates with expanded navies and offering pardons and consolidating colonial control over the former pirate havens and like in the colonies such as Nassau or like Haiti and like or Jamaica, or like parts of English colonies such as in the like the Panama or the colonies, and or like the and then later also like into the Bahamas, where but then by in 1675, pirates had also raided through the English colony of Tortuga, serving as a safe harbor in the base of buccaneers, who were basically like French land-based pirates, to launch raids on the Spanish ships and settlements, and like because basically the last role that played for the buccaneers was where they were then fighting against off the English back in 1693, and initially and so 1697, man, initially a base for a French buccaneers who hunted also in Hispaniola of these French, English, and Dutch settlements fled to Tortuga after Spanish attacks in the 1630s and turned to piracy. Pirates also like blundered, take over riches, and destroy any European ships, and they would take their cargo, valuable goods, and they also take ships too here, and that's what have been the trade and commerce and also raids throughout the Caribbean and trade, and also and while then like basically a safe haven and a utopia like in the Port Royal that I mentioned about before here, and that also get to into later here, and yeah, let's continue here. So then we have the Republic of the Pirates here, which is the what this called right here in the map, which is what is now called part in the modern day I think the Bahamas, where basically the Republic of the Pirates is considered not only formally a nation, but a loose alliance of pirates which took over Nassau, the Bahamas, from roughly from 1706 to 1718. The pirate haven was governed by a democratic pirate code that I talked about before. Piracy in the Caribbean began with the privateering during which the colonial era, where European nations licensed ships to attack rivals, then involved with these privateers, along with the impoverished sailors and plantation runaways, turned to illegal acts after wartime employment ended here. And so the piracy of Tortuga that I mentioned, Tortuga's history is defined as the role of a pirate haven in the 17th century, the first unofficial base for the buccaneers, and later as French colony had legitimized raids on Spanish ships, originally named Columbus for its turtle-like shape, and the island was inhabited by a small Spanish population until French and English settlers arrived in the 1620s, and using the location as to launch attacks on Spanish shipping. And so then finally we have the Port Royal, which is became known as the Pirate Utopia. This is because Port Royal, which is in Jamaica, was a major 17th century pirate haven that became a wealthy and wickedest city on earth due to the strategic location, natural harbor, and the English supported of their privateering against the Spanish. Notorious pirates such as like Henry Morgan use it as a base here, and merchants flocked there to buy stolen goods for them, and the city's prosperity with the wild reputation ended abruptly in 1692 when an earthquake and a tsunami had destroyed the city and with a significant portion of sinking into the ship. Because also then this bar and buccaneer here and this pirate haven, it also included many notorious pirates such as Benjamin Hornigold, Blackbeard, and Bonnie, Jack Rackham, who basically also were ringing around here in the Blackhaven where they drink and beer and like you see the toast here until then like when one of these crews had then later had to take off with their ships through raiding, conquest, and then later raid through other pirate ships and raid through also out the Caribbean, operating there until then like basically when they are either captured or killed by either British or Spanish and ships here until or they were either captured or trialed or then later have to be hanged. And yeah, so that was basically it of my presentation about pirates and the golden age of piracy here. And if you guys want to see more videos of me doing more history content like this, then what are you waiting for? Please be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel if you're new. Don't forget to comment, to turn on the bell notifications. That way you get notified by every video that I'll be posting in the channel. And yeah, so at some point and maybe in the future, and this maybe a new update for this channel is maybe I'll probably do maybe things such as like reacting to other YouTubers, like more real history content YouTubers, so reacting to their YouTube videos. So that's what I'll maybe plan this as maybe a future video. So, but yeah, but that's all the time here. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys also learned something new out of all the history of the pirates. But otherwise, I'll see you guys in my next video. So, Mr. Aaron's out. Peace.